Hi, this is Alicia Bolin with Creative Laughter TV Beyond Logic podcast. Today, our guest went from hairdresser to psychic medium. He's a speaker and he was voted Shea Parker's Best American Psychic. It is my pleasure to welcome Anthony Mikolojeski. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Alicia. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Good. So why don't you tell everybody, what exactly was it like for you growing up? Did you grow up with this gift? Were you born with it? Was it something that was developed later down the line?
Actually, I was born with it, and both answers I'll give you. I did develop it more as I got older. Yes, that's correct.
So about what age did you kind of go, things are different for me here?
Well, I knew it was different as a child, and I knew I had a special purpose. And then it probably wasn't until my early 20s that I started having visions and experiences. And that's what made me started to be a little bit more aware of my sensitivities.
So was that something that was frightening for you, or you're kind of like, what the heck's going on? Or did you at that point kind of know what was going on and wanted to develop it a little bit more?
Yes, all the above. It did kind of scare me at first. It kind of freaked me out, and it brought the attention to me to just be more aware. And I've had some psychic experiences where I'd be at work doing hair, and the phone would ring. And of course, I worked in a salon where we had close to 20 hairdressers, and I would know exactly that phone call was for me. Or it got to a point where I was having clients in my chair for the first time, and I'd be thinking about something so out of the blue while I'm doing a haircut, and they would bring it up moments later. Or there was a time where I was doing a haircut, and I had all of a sudden thought of a couple that I hadn't seen in like 3 years. And out of the clear blue, 3 minutes later, they walked in the door. So those experiences started getting my attention.
So how old were you? I mean, you went to with cosmetology school, right?
I did.
Is that kind of when you were feeling stuff, or was it actually when you actually became a hairdresser?
It was when I became a hairdresser.
So what was it like dating? I mean, growing up and dating and maybe feeling something off someone, like possibly being on a date and sitting across the table and going, this dude cheats a lot.
Yeah.
Did you ever get those kind of feelings?
I have, yes, unfortunately. Yes. And what's interesting is most people tend to feel something quite different about me. And I felt this way through high school and through most of my life. And so there has been some isolation to some degree. But my close friends and the people who know me have known that this has been developing through my life as it's been going and through our friendship over the years. And so they've seen the progression.
And what about your parents and siblings, if you have some? Did you go to them and you tell them, and were they like, or were they like on board?
Yes. My parents were pretty aware of it later on in my life. My mom, she actually had gifts of being able to smell, and she also had, was clairvoyant. So she was, able to see images.
Oh, so she recognized this in you then?
Yeah, she did.
Oh, that's good for you.
Yeah.
Well, I know.
And it also, from my dad's grandmother also, she was very psychic, and she also had spiritual visitations.
So what about your dad? Because we all know dads are a little bit different. They might not totally be on board, but they're like, okay. They kind of go with the flow sometimes.
Actually, my father used to say to me, you better listen to your mom. She's always right on what she feels or what she sees. So he says, I learned this a long time ago, and he'd chuckle about that.
Oh, that's cute. So I know you're married and you have a partner. So how did that come about? And does your partner have any gifts, or is he's just enjoying yours?
Well, he actually supports me quite a bit, and he has really pushed me to move forward into my mediumship and getting away from hairdressing. So he's just been wonderful. But the answer to your question, yes, he does have some gifts. He also is very empathic, and he also, he studies in meditation. So he's totally connected with what I do.
So does he ask you for readings and help in his business practices or whatever he does?
It doesn't kind of work that way. I think when you're in a close relationship with someone, it's harder to read or to give an actual reading for someone intimate in your life. It's just because I think your feelings get in the way. And I think from your partner's perspective, I don't know, maybe they second guess your ability, or maybe they're not taking it to heart as much because you know them so well, you know?
Well, I hear a lot of psychics say that they go to other psychics to get readings.
That is correct.
Yeah. So very few psychics can actually read themselves, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And why do you think that is?
Your psychological mind gets in the way. And so, you're more judgmental of yourself and the work that you do. Always. That's a human experience. And so to me, I think that's the answer. I think that's the reason why.
Oh, yeah, because I always bring this up because it's so funny to me. So many people say, oh, well, if they're psychic, why didn't they know this? Or why didn't they get the lotto numbers? Or why didn't they have that? And I keep trying to explain to everyone, they're just like us. They're human. They have learning lessons. They have soul contracts, and people don't get that. They just tend to think that if you know this information, why aren't you this?
Well, you can ask certain questions to your spirit guides about your path or decisions that you need to make. They will give you the answers in that realm. But when it comes to materialistic or selfish reasons, such as the lottery or advancing yourself more egotistically, or maybe, you're greedy or too excited and not wanting to go through the lessons of learning the process yourself, and then having instant gratification, it doesn't work that way for mediums.
So what do you say to those people? Because there are not nice metaphysical people out there who are definitely out to benefit themselves and can pick up information on you. So do you feel like there are some that can prey on people who they know they can get more money from, or they can get this? Because that comes up a lot too. And I don't work with those kind of people, but I know that they're out there. So what do you say to the people out there who are saying, oh, well, if they know information about me and then they can get this from me, what do you think about that?
Well, I don't like to really judge other people in my profession. I try to really be focused on the work that I do and working with my spirit guides in the spirit world, and focusing more on myself and for the benefit of my client, because we really work for the spirit world. They don't work for us. And when you think that they are working for you, that's when you start adding your ego, into your work. About professionalism, I think there's unprofessional people in every profession.
Absolutely.
There's unprofessional people that are attorneys. There's people that shouldn't be a doctor. There's people who shouldn't be a hairdresser. And that's my answer to it.
Well, that's a great answer. I think it's a great answer. Okay. Every time I talk to you about the hairdressing thing, I don't know. I always get like this reality show, the psychic hairdresser. I don't know. It's so cool to me. So when you have clients, because women, we love to gossip. And once we get with our hairdresser, it's our therapist. It's our, the person we unload to. Mm-hmm. So it's funny. Do you get a lot of information for your clients as they're sitting in the desk? And now that they realize that you're a psychic medium, do they ask you a lot of questions?
Well, yes, we are kind of like the bartender in the hair yes. in the hair world. Yes. And what I realize, though, is I do have clients that have come to me for a reading and we're kind of skeptical to come at first. But I always explain to them that when they come to me for a reading, the information that they're going to have during that reading is going to be far more intimate and detailed about family dynamics, about their past history, and their soul lessons that they've had to learn along the way. And those things you're not going to discuss in the chair while getting your hair done. The information that comes through is usually information that I would never know about their family dynamics, themselves, etc.
Right. So has spirit always been around us? Like we just don't know it, but because I hear a lot that they're here all the time, but we don't ask, and they're not going to help if you don't ask. It's like anything in life. If you don't ask, you don't get.
You're absolutely right. They're actually all around us. It's not, the spirit world is not just in heaven above us. It's intermingling with us in another dimension. So it's around us constantly.
So when you realized you had these gifts, like what exactly did you do about it? How did you help them move forward or see really what area you were in? Like some people are tarot card readers, some people are psychics. Not all psychics are mediums, right?
Well, you're right. Not every psychic is a medium. Everyone has psychic ability. Every person that's part of your senses is to have that psychic gut feeling, or your vision, or maybe you hear things, or you hear a little voice. That could be your clairaudient, where you're hearing voices. Your clairsentient, which you're feeling, or you're feeling somebody else's experience, where you're getting feelings and visions at the same time. Clairvoyance is when you're seeing the visions. And clairscent is when you're smelling something. So something that will you get a whiff of perfume of maybe from your grandmother or your mother, or maybe your cologne from your father. So these are the senses that you would feel. Everyone has these abilities. It's just a matter of being aware of them, and it's, I think, a soul decision to whether or not you want to work with them.
So what exactly was your epiphany when you said, okay, this is it. I loved doing hair, but this part of my life is over now. I'm meant to do the spiritual work. What was it that made you go, okay, this is it?
Yeah, I want to just elaborate a little bit on that last question just a bit, because not every, you asked me a question about, is every psychic a medium? And that question is no. There's a lot of people that are psychic, but not every psychic is a medium. But if you're a medium, you're a darn good psychic, because you have to raise your frequency level much higher to connect with the spirit level. And that higher frequency makes you have the ability to tap into the spirit world and the psychic.
So in a sense, it makes you a little bit more powerful.
Right. The answer to your next question of what was the reality check, I think the reality check for me is when I was looking for an apartment at one particular time of my life. And this is when the computers and cell phones were not connected. So you had to do the old-fashioned way of looking for an apartment in the paper. So I must have interviewed a lot of apartments, probably 10 of them, in this city called Hamtramck, which is surrounded by Detroit. And it's a Polish community. And so I found this upper flat. It's very similar to Brooklyn. It has an upper and lower, and it was clean. It was safe. The landlords lived downstairs. And after, a few months of living there, I had all these experiences where I had noises and I had pictures simultaneously falling off the walls. And I had my phone went out, the microwave went out, et cetera, just a number of experiences. And so I went to this psychic woman named Nancy in Canada, and she's referred to me by another friend. And she said to me, she says, you have a spirit in your home. And she says, actually, the reason why you have this spirit is because your mom's family grew up in this upper part of this house. And there's a relationship with this. And I said, there's no way. I knew my mom's family did grow up in Hamtramck, but I had no idea that it was that particular house. There's no way.
Wow.
Yeah. And so what she did then is she said, the reason why the spirit's there is because, the spirit knew your mom's family and feels very comfortable residing there. And he hasn't completely crossed over to the other side. And you're going to have to assist him in helping him to cross over. And so she kind of guided me. It's a much more detailed story, but we don't have enough time for that. But I basically guided that spirit to cross over to the other side. And in that process, she told me, she says, you're going to be doing this very soon, what I do for a living. And I said to her, you are crazy.
I know. Don't we always say that when we get information? It's funny.
Right. And through that process over the years, my psychic development just started increasing, and it just started, building on itself. And then I started taking classes from other professional psychics that I researched. I've studied with James Von Prague. I studied with Tony Stockwell. I've studied with Jill Jackson. I studied with Mavis Patilla.
So do all psychics need training, or do some just kind of just go out on their own? How does that work?
I think there are people who are working who are naturally gifted. And I believe I'm naturally gifted. But I do believe we all need some kind of training in and professionalism and some type of ethics that fall behind it of what not to do and what is acceptable. Because you can't walk around constantly going up to people that are strangers and giving them readings. It's just very unethical. You can't constantly be on either, because you're going to drain and deplete your energy. So there's a point of knowing how to shut that down and work with it when you're working, and when you're not working, you're here to be enjoying your physical life here on planet Earth and, having that physical experience.
So a lot of psychics have a really hard time sleeping because of this. So are you one of those?
I am.
Are you able to turn it off? Yeah, God, I hear that all the time. That must be horrible.
It is horrible.
Yeah, not to get you sleep, having people bug you.
Yeah, they bug me. And a lot of times you just have to say, you know what? You have to leave me alone. This is my time to go to sleep.
That's fun. I had a psychic at my house stay the night, and she was in, I was taking care of my mother, and she was in my mother's room sleeping, and my sister was keeping her up, like telling her how she would do all these things to herself and whatever. And so the next morning we're at the breakfast table and she goes, "Oh my God, your sister wouldn't leave me alone." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, Kimberly's her name, right?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "All night she was just telling me stuff and she wouldn't go." I was like, "Oh man."
Well, they're very excited to try to get through to us, because they realize that that's probably their only way to communicate through the physical world is through us. And so it's very exciting for them. And they actually plan this way in advance, usually months ahead of time. They pick the psychic to communicate through to their relative or friend for messages.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yes.
Never heard that before. That's cool.
Yes. Yep. They pick the psychic who's perfect, the psychic or medium, I should say, to connect the message to the family, personal relative or family member or friend who's crossed over to the other side.
So what do you feel your specialty is? Psychic medium?
I'm psychic medium, yes.
Oh, so that's great. So you have the whole gamut.
I have the whole gamut.
So what do you do? Okay, so we got the holidays coming up right now. What do you do when you go to all these parties? Do you have people constantly coming up to you, asking you questions? I mean, that has to be tiring.
Well, I don't have people constantly asking me, but I do get requests usually after they've had a couple cocktails and they have the bravery or the guts to come up and ask me. And I tell them, I'm here to have a party like you are. I'm enjoying myself. I've been drinking. And it's just not professional for me to give you a reading at a party. It's just, it's just not the setting. It's not personal stuff can happen. And you have to take total responsibility for when you're giving someone a reading, because it is a message from the spirit world, and it is a gift from God, and you have to take it with responsibility, because you don't want somebody to be emotionally upset from that party,
right,
or wherever you are, and have an accident because they're emotionally upset, or you don't know if they're mentally stable to be accepting that information at that time. So there's a lot of things to really think about.
Yeah, it's an emotional time. I remember I had this phone reading once when I was really young and I was starving. So I was eating peanut M&Ms because I'm a candy freak. And she said to me, "What are you doing? Are you eating?" And I said, "Yes, I'm eating peanut M&Ms." She goes, "You need to put those down, please. You can't drink, smoke, eat." She goes, "The energy needs to be clear." And I was like, "Ooh, okay." She's like, "Bam, stop that." So I guess food is part of the alcohol and all the other things you can do before you have a reading.
Yeah, it's not a good thing to be eating, and it's certainly you shouldn't be under the influence of anything going in for a reading, because you really want to be open and aware to retain the information that the psychic medium is giving you, so that you can take that with you. And, however you want to process that, whether you're taping it or writing messages down or, notes down on a piece of paper, you want to take that information, and it's personal, and it's very serious. So I take my work very seriously.
Right, absolutely. I don't know if you know anything about auras, but they say if you drink a lot, smoke, do drugs, whatever, you're poking holes in your aura, and then you're letting not so nice energy get in. Do you believe that? Do you think that's true?
During a reading?
No, period. Just in general in life.
I believe that if you are living in your physical, your life, I think you need to enjoy life in a respectable way. And, that's like saying, well, I'm not going to have a dessert ever in my life. And, you kind of have to have the experience of being responsible, but yet enjoying yourself. And there's a time when your aura needs to be totally clear. And I think that's why they put, warnings on alcohol bottles and to say, well, you shouldn't be driving or you shouldn't be using equipment while drinking, alcohol.
Right. Yeah, that's funny. So why do you think exactly the spirit world wants to contact us so bad?
Well, they're very, like I said, they're very excited to actually work through the medium to get the message to their relative or friend who's sitting in front of the medium. So that's really what it's about. The second thing is that they usually have a message at the end of the reading, which is pertaining to what's going on in that person's life that they really need to hear. So there could be, let's say I have a client that's sitting in front of me and they feel maybe responsible or guilty for their relative who's passed. Maybe they can't move forward in their life right now, and this has been holding on for 20 to 30 years. I've seen it happen many times. And the loved one will come through on the other side. They'll describe who they are. They'll give me their age, how they passed. They'll talk about their personality, their relationship to the client. And they'll tell me about physical evidence of things that are going on in the past of their life and how and maybe also how they passed. And they'll tell this person, look, it was my turn to go. It was my time to go. And they don't really realize it till they get over to the spiritual world and they know that they have a soul contract. So when we enter this world, we all have soul contracts. So when we come into the world, we make a collective decision to come back in as a soul. And we choose our parents, we choose our life, and we also choose our life lessons. And with that, we choose when we're going to leave. Very interesting.
Wow, that is so interesting. It's kind of comforting even to hear you say it, even though it wasn't, pertaining to me or to somebody else.
Yeah.
So what about the spirits who are just roaming around in our house, who like maybe the apartment building or the home was built on something and disturbed everybody? Because, I live in New York, so a lot of people die in New York in these apartments. So what about the leftover people who don't want to leave those apartments for good or bad? What do you make of that, and how do you get rid of them?
Well, there's a few different situations going on here. One could be that they are just going there to visit. And so the spirit world visits us regularly. They're always aware of our special times, our special occasions. And sometimes they go back to a place that they really loved at one particular time. So they will make their presence known. Then there are spirits who are sometimes stuck in the middle. They're not quite in the spirit world, and they're still partially in the physical world. And they kind of do the same actions that they did while they were here. So they kind of do this, it's almost like a repeat movie in a sense, where they keep repeating the same actions. It's quite interesting.
Well, do you believe that sage gets them, actually makes them leave? Because some psychics say, oh, you need a specialist to come in and get rid of them. Others say, no, you just need to use your intent and say, spirits be gone, and use your sage. What do you think about all that?
It's kind of all of the above. You can try sage in your intention with asking them to leave and not to return. Sometimes it's not as easy as that. Sometimes you have to do it several times. If it's still not working, you might have to have somebody that specializes in that to remove the spirit from the house, because there's just that much attachment.
There could be negative entities coming into your house that are a big problem, right? They're violent or whatever the case may be. And so typically those type of spirits that are in your house, does that take a real professional? And should you be scared of them? Can they really do anything to you?
I don't believe there are scary entities. I have never experienced one. most of the time, the spirit that's trying to get your attention is trying to either give you a message, or they're trying to say, "Hey, listen, I'm here. I need help." They're kind of stuck in the middle of a place. I don't know how to answer that. I know your question was very specific, but I have never dealt with anything evil or any kind of entity when I'm dealing with the spirit world. It's always about forgiveness and love on the other side for me.
So how can people, if they want, because I'm a big believer in writing wish lists and, talking to the people up above, because if you don't ask for things, you can't get them. So how would people go about, in your opinion, to talk to the people that are around them if they didn't know who they were and they had to generalize it?
I would recommend that you sit in a quiet place and ask for them to assist you. And I would also ask them to intervene into your life to give their assistance in your situation.
And so how do you actually recommend they do that?
I think most people, to be honest with you, don't feel comfortable doing what I'm going to suggest. But I mean, sitting there and asking one of your relatives to assist you in buying your house, some people will feel comfortable with that. I would say most wouldn't. If you want to come to myself and have a reading by me and hopefully connect with the spirit or loved one who's crossed over, and if you need some guidance or spiritual assistance, that's why they come through. They usually have a message for you that is pertaining to your life, or they may want to give you, they probably want to give you some reassurance. They may want to give you some closure to how they passed. They want to let you know that everything's okay on the other side. They also might want to ask for forgiveness. So there's closure going on the physical side, which is the client sitting in front of me. And then there's also a healing going on in the spiritual side as well, with that loved one knowing that this person can finally move forward in their life. They've heard the information from the spirit world that's pertaining to their life now, and how they could make their life so much better by letting this go, knowing that this relative is at a better place, or friend is at a better place, and they could move forward now in the spirit world. And so it's simultaneously, both parties are getting a healing through the heart source. And it's a three-way connection from their heart in the spirit world through my heart to the heart of the person sitting in front of me. And that's how you feel the information while having a reading.
Well, the interpretation of your information, people say, well, that wasn't correct. That wasn't right. But I remember having readings where 9 years later, in detail, exactly what the person said came true. So it's like, there is no time in spirit. And, interpretations like going to a movie. You and I are both going to go see the same movie, and we're going to have a different interpretation of that. So what do you say to the people who have those kind of comments?
Well, I believe that my responsibility and my job is to be as accurate as possible. And we all know, as in my colleagues in the mediumship world, that we're not 100% correct in everything that we say. But if we get the messages to our clients and we're 95 or 98% correct, or even 85% correct, I think that is pretty amazing, considering that I know nothing about this person. Now, when people come to me to get a reading, I ask them to write down on a piece of paper 5 important questions that they would like to have answered. And some of them are pertaining to relatives who've crossed over. And then some of the questions are pertaining to their lives and what's going on currently. So I don't let them show me that piece of paper, and I just do what I do. And through the later part of the reading, I'll say to them, I think we have maybe one question that we didn't cover. And they'll go over the sheet of paper and they'll say, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. There's one that you missed. But what's really weird is you've actually answered them in the order that they were written.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is very cool. It's happened quite often. That's what I like to do. Is that's the whole thing about mediumship and being a psychic is that you're able to help people with closure or forgiveness, or give them some kind of healing aspect in their life and some type of direction to be able to have them be fulfilled and be back on their blueprint in life and be happy. And that's what I do.
Well, I think that's fantastic. And, thank you so much for joining the podcast. We're definitely going to check back in with you. And if you'd like to book a reading or find out more about Anthony, go to his website, www.anthonymikolojeski.com. And also, don't forget to go to our website, check out our group sessions with your favorite psychics. And remember, you create your life, you create your future. This is Alicia Bowling with Beyond Logic.